This afternoon is a simple and quick consultation, and it marks another small but significant milestone in the consultative process as we, as a nation, advance our climate resilience agenda. Contrary to those who feel that the term climate resilient is now overused, I am of the view that its usage in speeches, discussions, radio programs, debates, and conversations across the island has served to make it a household term and is beginning to transcend into a way of life for all Dominicans. The Climate Resilience Executive Agency, more passionately known as Cread, now enjoy that same prominence. During our budget debate, in the address of 2018 budget, Honorable Prime Minister, in further strengthening the national policy framework, reminded the nation on why the Climate Resilient Agency of Dominica, Cread, was conceptualized. I want to now just list some of the points from the budget statement that I think are quite suitable for today's consultation. Cread's role is to coordinate and implement selected capital projects assigned to it by Cabinet through the Policy Advisory Board that are critical to building a climate-resilient infrastructure. Cread will perform an important function in retooling public officers by exposing them to new technologies and systems in engineering design, project management, and procurement to increase the efficiency and effectiveness in managing donor and local resources for project design and implementation. Cread will be staffed by local and international experts with experience in various engineering disciplines, climate resilient building and procurement. The Prime Minister also reported the extensive selection process carried out by a recruitment firm and supervised by a selection committee made up of public officers and representatives of the donor partners that presented to him a short list of candidates and he confirmed then in July that the Chief Executive Officer of Cread was selected. The creation of Cread has received broad support from our donor partners who over the last few months have been working very closely with us in fleshing out the nuts and bolts to make Cread a functioning reality. He also advised the nation that the United Kingdom, through its Department of International Development, DFID, has provided technical advice and financial support for the establishment of Cread, and that the Canadian government had provided drafting assistance to develop the legislative framework to govern it. The UNDP was also mentioned in the budget update, and with the support of DFID, is also providing technical and financial support to the Cread Transition Office that has established the physical space and facilities required for Cread to operate, provided logistical support to the selection committee to recruit Cread's senior staff, identify and coordinate early recovery activities, and support the early progress of projects likely to be executed by Cread once it is fully established. He also reminded that the bill is expected to go before Parliament for consideration and approval at its next sitting. The draft bill that we circulated this afternoon was completed less than 2 weeks ago and is scheduled to go before Parliament sometime in December. So regardless of the limited framework, government decided that it will keep its promise to present the bill to stakeholders as soon as was possible after the drafting was completed. This is why we attempted last week, Wednesday, to hold this session, which was postponed to today due to some unforeseen developments. I wish to extend our apologies to all for the inconvenience that our challenges relating to timing may have caused you last week and this Wednesday. I wish to also highlight two previous consultations at the national level that also informed where we are today. The national consultation on February 19th, 2018, under the theme, Building the First Resilient Country, Our Collective Responsibility. You'll recall that at this consultation, we had hundreds of stakeholders and civil society, church, trade unions, all were allowed to present their views and perspectives. And those who did not attend were asked to send in the presentations, and that they did. We also had another major national event on February, that was March 9th, when we formally launched Cread. And there we had experts from the international community sharing with us their perspectives on Cread, its operation, and climate resilience in general. So where we are today was built from that past programs, and should be no stranger to all of those who participated in those events, which were recorded and in fact carried live. So the Cread bill that will be presented by the Attorney General today was born out of a framework document approved by Cabinet and discussed on a number of occasions, including some detailed discussion on that launching on February 2018. So the bill, in essence, legislates the very framework document which was prepared with the assistance of our international partners and previously circulated. I think it is also posted on the government website. It covers the main objectives, governance structures, and functions of Cread. A transition committee was appointed by Cabinet to take Cread from its inception to a fully fledged statutory body. Its work included the oversight of the drafting of legislation, appointment of a selection committee which recruited the top management, and the establishment of the Cread office, among other things. The bill is simple, and that we should get through with the discussions within a reasonably short time. Our agenda, as you can see, is even simpler, which allows the Attorney General to walk us through the bill so that we can familiarize ourselves with it, to have some discussions, and to ensure that we don't interfere with your 4 o'clock departure to your homes. So I invite all to fully participate the best you can, and to use this occasion to invite the Attorney General, Honorable Levi Peter, to present the bill.
It may be that each individual may have their own concept of what Cread is. Perhaps before going into my presentation, I should say this, which I think I didn't hear the Secretary to the Cabinet say, but it is something that I'd ask that we bear in mind. For the purpose of this discussion, this presentation is focused on the bill, but it may obviously be that people may have other issues of concern. Fine to raise it. As I understand it, the intention will be that anything that's raised that needs clarification, notes will be taken of everything transpiring, so feel free to raise your issues, and what can't be addressed, if anything, will be noted and addressed subsequently. But to go back to the issue of Cread, I think, and that perhaps for this discussion and this presentation, I can do no better than the Honorable Prime Minister, so I will read an extract of his address to the CARICOM UNDP conference in New York on the 21st of November 2017, where he set out the main parameters of Cread as follows, open quotes. The unprecedented challenge we face has led us to take the unprecedented decision to build an execution agency outside of our standard public service systems. We are calling it Cread, Climate Resilience Execution Agency of Dominica. The mission of the agency will be to coordinate all reconstruction work to avoid duplication, minimize economies of scale, spot and fill critical gaps, avoid bureaucratic infighting, and ensure all reconstruction activities are focused on a single climate resilient recovery plan developed by Dominica and its partners. My government sees transparency and proper financial management as extremely important. Cread will be required to operate to the highest standards of transparency and financial management, as well as accountability and community engagement. There will also be a role for external audit, as it is the intention that the executing agency operates within the highest level of transparency and accountability. The agency will own the reconstruction targets and, through new powers given to it by Parliament, prescribed in scope and time, would have the ability to step in to improve delivery where those targets are slipping. Cread will be on a continuous emergency footing. New projects will come first to Cread's coordination war room. Cread will ensure they fit into the climate resilient recovery plan, and there is coordination with and a leveraging of other projects. Cread and donors will decide where the project is best delivered, whether from line ministries, a partnership between Cread and the donor, or by Cread itself. Cread will centralize scarce procurement skills and will be a one-stop shop for licensing and permitting. It is our hope that a parliamentary oversight committee will be established to provide real-time oversight to the functioning of the Cread. It is also anticipated that the Chief Executive Officer will be required to report to Parliament on a regular basis. Cread will need strong, proven leadership with the confidence of donors, government, and beneficiaries. It will have a balance of broad international expertise and deep local knowledge, a problem-solving mindset, close quote. That is the context, ladies and gentlemen, in which Cread has come, or is to come into being. That's the concept behind it. And in light of that, if I move to the bill itself and take you, or proceed through the bill, and try to do it fairly quickly to allow time for questions and discussion. Perhaps the easiest way for me to do that is to look at or turn to the objects and reasons, or otherwise known as explanatory notes, and just read through those. I would tell you the bill is divided into 6 parts, consists of 25 sections, and so if I start off from this bit, the bill seeks to give legal effect to and provide for the establishment of the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica, otherwise known as Cread, and for related matters. The primary objects of the bill are fourfold. A, to promote the swift and cost-effective recovery of Dominica from climate-related disasters. B, to ensure that any physical and other infrastructure damaged or destroyed during a climate-related disaster is reconstructed or restored to a state that is better than its state before the occurrence of the disaster. C, to ensure that Dominica will be more resilient to natural hazards and better able to respond to climate-related disasters. And D, to assist the public and private sectors and civil society to be better equipped to manage and recover from climate-related disasters. Part 1 of the bill deals essentially with the title of the bill and preliminary matters. So definitions and the objects are also addressed there, as I just set out. Part 2 of the bill, which is Clause 4 to Clause 7, provides for the Dominica Climate Resilience Policy Board. The board would be constituted, or will be constituted, in accordance with Clause 4 of the bill, and the functions of the board will be as set out in Clause 5. The functions of the board will include defining the measures needed to make Dominica a climate-resilient nation in all sectors. The board will also be responsible for the development, in consultation with Cread and other experts, of the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan. The Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan will specify recovery priorities, targets, and goals for Dominica. Clause 7 specifies the duties of the Cabinet Secretary, or the Secretary to the Cabinet, as he should formally be described. And these duties include liaising between the Prime Minister and Cread, ensuring that Cread is facilitated and supported as is necessary for the effective delivery and implementation of its mandate, and advising the Prime Minister on the strategic direction of Cread in the context of wider cross-governmental objectives. Part 3 of the bill, which consists of clauses 8 to 15, provide for the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica. Clause 8 will establish the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica. The function of the Cread functions of the Cread are set out in Clause 9 and include the following. A, ensuring the climate resilience of the physical and other infrastructure of Dominica. B, coordinating recovery action following a climate-related disaster. C, identifying, developing, and recommending to the board climate-resilient systems. D, promoting the development of Dominica as a climate-resilient nation. E, implementing major capital projects. F, preparing a Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan, and accounting to the board for the delivery of targets set out in that plan. Clause 11 specifies the duties of Cread, which include coordinating recovery action in relation to all relevant sectors, especially the key target areas which are to be prescribed pursuant to Clause 11.1. Clause 12 would provide for the management of Cread by a committee, which is to be known as the Cread Executive Management Committee. Clause 13 would provide for the Prime Minister to appoint the Chief Executive Officer of Cread on terms and conditions as the Prime Minister may, after consultation with the Supervisory Committee, determine. The Chief Executive Officer would be the Accounting Officer of Cread. Clause 14 will provide for the establishment of the Major Capital Projects Unit. This unit will be responsible for the implementation and supervision of major infrastructural projects of the government that relate to climate-resilient construction. And Clause 14.1 specifically refers to this. The Major Capital Projects Unit would be required to manage procurement for projects managed by Cread. Part 4 addresses financial matters, and Clause 16 identifies the funds and resources of Cread. The funds and resources of Cread will consist of such sums as may be provided by the government for the purpose, any grant made to Cread, with the approval of the Minister of Finance by a person, body, or international organization, and all other monies or property which may in any manner become payable to or vested in Cread in respect to any matter. Clause 17 will require Cread to keep proper accounts of its transactions, and its accounts will be audited annually. Clause 18 will require the Chief Executive Officer to prepare and present an annual report to the Prime Minister within 6 months of the end of the financial year. Part 5. Part 5 provides for the Cread Supervisory Committee. Clause 19.1 will establish the Cread Supervisory Committee. The committee will be constituted in accordance with Clause 19.2. Clause 20 specifies the functions of the Supervisory Committee, which include overseeing the assurance systems of Cread, appointing an external auditor for Cread, and ensuring that Cread has effective arrangements in place to provide assurance on financial management, audit, controls, and institutional governance. The Supervisory Committee will be required to appoint a subcommittee to be known as the Cread Audit and Risk Committee, and that's provided for in Clause 21. Part 6 deals with miscellaneous matters. Clause 22 will empower the Minister to make regulations to give effect to the provisions of the Agreement and the Act. Clause 23 provides for the Act to bind the State. Clause 25 provides that the Act will continue in force for a period of 4 years from the date of its commencement, unless the Prime Minister extends it for 1 further year by order, subject to negative resolution of the House. So if I, perhaps just before opening, maybe take that last clause first, in terms of just elaborating a little. As you will doubtless be aware, and those who are not will obviously now become aware, the mandate of Cread is limited in time to a period of 4 years. What Clause 25 provides for is that it can be extended in the limited circumstance set out in the Clause 25, which would require the Prime Minister, by order, to extend it, but the Prime Minister in that circumstance would not be able to extend its life beyond a period of 1 year. So the maximum duration based on this piece of legislation would be a 5-year lifespan for the Cread as it now stands. Clause 1, as it's there, is the citation of the Act, as it will be, the bill now. Clause 2 is labeled the interpretation section. The terms set out there are terms that appear in the bill, and it was considered to be appropriate to define them in that section. Clause 3 sets out the objects which I read earlier on. D, to determine whether any public sector recovery action or project is best delivered. So that's a determination has to be made by the policy board whether any project is best delivered or is appropriate or suited to Cread, or whether it should be addressed using one of the other mechanisms available within the system. E, to advise the government on the promotion through public messaging and other means of any measures referred to in paragraph A. 2, the establishment of national standards to ensure that all new public and private built infrastructure is climate resilient within specific hydrological and geophysical context of Dominica. And 3, the implementation by administrative, legislative, or other means of any measures or standards referred to in subparagraph 1 and 2. So those are the functions of the board. And Clause 6 deals with the power of the board, provides for the board to be empowered to appoint a subcommittee or co-opt any person to attend its meetings for the purpose of assisting or advising it. I would have thought that that's probably an uncontroversial provision. Duties of the Secretary to the Cabinet, I touched on those. I think all of those were addressed by me, so unless somebody wants me to, I won't go back to them. Part 3, starting from clause 8, which is provides for the actual establishment of Cread. There is established as a body corporate an agency to be known as the Climate Resilience Execution Agency for Dominica, which we term Cread, and it sets out the functions of Cread, and I probably should read them. Quite a few in number, so I hope you bear with me. The functions of Cread are: A, to ensure the climate resilience of the physical and other infrastructure of Dominica; B, to coordinate recovery actions following a climate-related disaster, including the construction, reconstruction, or restoration of physical or other infrastructure, and the execution of projects aimed at building national climate resilience in order to: 1, prioritize and accelerate projects, and, where necessary, to ensure that projects are properly sequenced; 2, avoid duplication; 3, maximize economies of scale; 4, identify and reduce critical gaps in funding and other areas; 5, expedite the granting of approvals, permits, and licenses and other processes; 6, ensure consistency with the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan; C, to identify, develop, and recommend to the board climate resilient systems; D, to promote the development of Dominica as a climate resilient nation by disseminating relevant information throughout the public and private sectors and by other means; E, to implement major capital projects; F, to prepare a Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan; G, to be accountable to the board for the delivery of targets set in the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan and the Cread strategic plan. H, to facilitate processes for procurement, licensing, and the granting of permissions relating to recovery action. I, to execute projects within the Dominica Climate Resilience Recovery Plan. J, to establish and maintain a database containing information on recovery needs, including gender-specific needs and potential and existing projects. K, to monitor progress against reconstruction targets and evaluate the social and economic impact of interventions. L, to review relevant government policies and plans to advise on their consistency with the Dominica Climate Resilience and Recovery Plan. M, to support government ministries to enable them to implement climate resilient policies and priority recovery projects. N, to establish a facility which allows it to provide surge capacity to government ministries in a range of technical areas. O, to make available support, including legal expertise, to assist in building the capacity of government ministries and other agencies to meet donor conditions for drawdown of funds, procurement, climate resilient planning, and project management. P, to establish assurance systems that protect against fraud and corruption and set the highest standards of transparency. And Q, to do such other things as are necessary or expedient for the performance of its functions. Clause 10 provides for the board to give directions in respect to policy. The board may, after consultation with the Chief Executive Officer, give to Cread any written direction concerning the policy to be followed by Cread in the performance of its functions as appears to the board to be necessary in the public interest. 2, Cread shall give effect to any directions given by the board under subsection 1. The duties of Cread are set out at clause 11. I don't, well, perhaps I'll read that because, just to show, because, but it's probably of significance. Cread shall ensure that A, there is community engagement in the design, implementation, and evaluation of all projects managed by it. B, public consultations are held for communities affected by large-scale infrastructure projects. And C, it holds stakeholders forum meetings at least twice a year to engage in dialogue with and receive feedback from civil society, the private sector, and other interested individuals on its work and proposed work plan. 4, Cread shall provide publicly accessible, web-based, and other monitoring of the progress of the projects. 12 deals with the Executive Management Committee, and I think that's fairly straightforward. 13 deals with the Chief Executive Office, the position of CEO. Again, I think that's fairly right. It's suggested that let me do 13.1. The Prime Minister shall appoint the Chief Executive Officer of Cread on such terms and conditions as the Prime Minister may, after consultation with the Supervisory Committee, determine, which is what I referred to earlier. But at subsection 5, the Chief Executive Officer shall report at least once every 6 months to a committee of the House of Assembly or a Cread Parliamentary Oversight Committee established under the standing orders of the House of Assembly. Subsection 6, the Cread Parliamentary Oversight Committee referred to in subsection 5 shall comprise the Attorney General as chairperson and 2 government and 2 opposition members of the House of Assembly. So that's a mechanism for oversight comprising of parliamentary members of Parliament, opposition, and the government side. 14 is probably important as well. As it says, it's the Major Capital Projects Unit, establishment of that unit. And under that section, it sets out the Major Capital Unit shall manage procurement for projects managed by Cread and may manage procurement for projects implemented by other entities. And the other matters set out there, I don't think 15 deals with the appointment of staff, the Executive Management Committee, and the powers that that committee has to appoint and employ various staff. Section 16, which is beginning of Part 4, deals with financial provisions, as previously indicated. So that section 16, 17, and 18 deal with the financial oversight, for want of a better term, in respect to requirement for provision of reports and audits and so forth. Part 5 provides for the creation of the Supervisory Committee. Clause 19.1, the Prime Minister shall appoint a committee to be known as the Cread Supervisory Committee. The Supervisory Committee, subsection 2, shall comprise 7 members with appropriate qualifications and experience, as follows. A, 4 persons nominated by donors that contribute to Cread's core funding or that implement their projects through Cread. B, 2 public officers with financial management responsibilities, and C, 1 senior representative of the local or regional private sector with experience in audit and nominated by the members appointed under paragraphs A and B. So, again, I think that's fairly straightforward. The Supervisory Committee, 7-member committee, the four of those will be appointed from persons nominated by the donor community, if I can paraphrase that way. 2 will be public officers with the specific identified financial management responsibilities, and 1 will be a senior representative from local or regional private sector with the experience prescribed there. Subsection 3, the members of the Supervisory Committee shall elect a member to be the chairperson and may elect another member to be the deputy chairperson. So in effect, the Supervisory Committee will decide how it addresses that issue of appointment of a chairperson and a deputy chairperson. Subsection 4, an appointment of a member of the Supervisory Committee shall be in writing and shall be published in the Gazette. So it will be public knowledge and have to be made clear who the membership of the Supervisory Committee, and that is in keeping with the whole ethos of transparency. Subsection 5, a member of the Supervisory Committee shall hold office for 2 years and is eligible for reappointment. 6, the Prime Minister may revoke the appointment of a member of the Supervisory Committee only for inability to perform the duties of his or her office, whether arising from infirmity of body or mind or any other cause, or for misbehavior. So a member of that committee, whilst the Prime Minister has the authority, is empowered to revoke the appointment of a member of the Supervisory Committee, he can only do so in those very limited circumstances that I just read out. That's only for inability to perform the duties of his or her office or for misbehavior. Subsection 7. 4 members of the Supervisory Committee, including 1 public officer, shall form a quorum. Subsection 8. The chairman or deputy chairman shall preside at meetings of the Supervisory Committee. And subsection 9. The Supervisory Committee shall have the power to regulate its own proceedings. The functions of the Supervisory Committee are addressed at section 20 as follows. A, to oversee the assurance systems of Cread. B, to appoint an external auditor for Cread. And C, to ensure that Cread has effective arrangements in place to provide assurance on financial management, audit, controls, and institutional governance. Section 21 provides for the Supervisory Committee to appoint a subcommittee, as was said, which is to be termed the Cread Audit and Risk Committee. The Audit and Risk Committee shall comprise of 4 members as follows. A, 1 member of the Supervisory Committee with experience in audit as chairperson. B, 1 person with experience in finance. C, 1 person with experience in project management. And D, 1 public officer. And at least 1 of the members shall also have knowledge and experience in donor procurement and reporting requirements. So what is clear is from clause 2A, at least 1 person who is appointed on the Supervisory Committee will have to be a person with experience in audit. Otherwise, the Audit Risk Committee will not have a chair based on this legislation as currently drafted. The subsection 3 deals with the functions of the Audit Committee, and they are as follows. A, to recommend to the Supervisory Committee an external auditor for Cread. B, to review Cread's internal and external audit reports and submit recommendations to the Supervisory Committee. C, to oversee regular audits of procurement and tender practice. And D, to approve requests from Cread for additions to its budget, not exceeding 15% of its annual budget, or make recommendations to the Supervisory Committee for larger additions. Again, I think this is in keeping with the thrust for tight financial management and transparency, why their fairly tight controls are put in place as part of the legislative framework. And Part 6, the final part of the bill, dealing with miscellaneous matters, Clause 22 provides for the Prime Minister to make regulations for the purpose of implementing the provisions of this Act, including regulations pertaining to A, the selection of candidates for the position of Chief Executive Officer, B, the appointment of the Chief Executive Officer, C, the assessment of the performance of the Chief Executive Officer, D, the matters to be included in the annual business plan of Cread, E, the key target areas for recovery action carried out or coordinated by Cread, and F, the scope of external audits of Cread. Clause 23 provides that this act binds the state. So once this act is passed, the state is bound by its provisions, as is everybody else. 24, this act shall come into force on such date as the Prime Minister may, by order published in the Gazette, appoint. And the final clause, 25, I addressed earlier on, which is providing for the lifespan of the Cread. And as the Secretary of the Cabinet indicated earlier, the intention is for this bill to be taken to Parliament. If there are any observations, suggestions from the floor, they may well find favor and find themselves in the bill.